All right, guys, welcome back. This is our fourth segment, I believe, of this asynchronous lecture, and we're going to take up the eBay case. So this is a fun case. It's a complicated case. I think it's a hard case to get our arms around, but hopefully if you've read it carefully and thought about it, then you listen to this lecture, it'll make a little bit more sense. So this case is about spinning, right? The first question we have to answer is, what is spinning? What is the practice? And if you don't understand the practice, you won't understand the case, right? So again, if I were you, I would draw a diagram to help with understanding this case. So what is spinning? So a little bit of background. Investment banks, as some of you may know, underwrite securities offerings. In other words, they help companies go public, right? They help them bring their shares to the public, including doing initial public offerings when a company is selling shares to the public for the first time. So investment banks help companies go public, right? Selling these newly minted shares to investors, right? And then that money comes into the company and helps fund the company's business. Sometimes investors who buy shares are people like you and me, right? Sometimes they are very big institutions like mutual funds and pension funds and endowments. Sometimes they are very wealthy individuals, right? Like the investors on Shark Tank, right? Sometimes they are officers and directors of companies, right? Officers and directors, like everybody else, want to buy shares of lots of corporations out there, not only the corporation where they work, but lots of other corporations. It all depends on the offering, right? It all depends on the offering. In some cases, when an IPO, when an initial public offering is in great demand, the price of the shares will increase sharply right after the IPO, right? So the IPO price to buy the shares might be, say, $50 a share, right? If you want to get in on the IPO, you have to buy the shares, right? They're going to be allotted to you at $50. But maybe in the first day or two of trading, the share price might jump to $60, $70, $80 a share. And there's reasons for this, which we can discuss more, but suffice it to say now that in some cases of hot IPOs, the price of the share price of the company will jump a lot in the first few hours and days of trading. In addition, investment banks have discretion with regard to who can buy shares in the IPO, right? The investment banks can allocate IPO shares of various companies to whoever they want. They're in charge of the offering, and although there are certain rules which govern this, there's also a lot of flexibility. So the investment bank can allocate shares of various companies that they are underwriting to employees of favored clients of the investment bank, knowing that those shares can immediately be resold at a profit. Right? Let me say that again. The investment bank has discretion, right? Although there are rules that govern this stuff, they've got discretion to allocate shares to favored clients, knowing that the shares can immediately be sold at a profit. Investment banks do this, or at least they did this at one time, right? Meaning they allocate shares in this way in the hope of gaining favor of those employees to secure future business by their employer, by the company. In other words, the investment banks will allocate shares to the officers and directors of a certain company out there, the ABC Widget Company, with the hope of giving the officers and directors that benefit so that at one point then down the road, those officers and directors of the ABC Widget Company will come back to the investment bank and give them business, right? Here, Goldman Sachs allegedly engaged in spinning. It allocated shares of other companies' IPOs to certain officers and directors of eBay, knowing that the eBay officers and directors could immediately resell or spin out, right? Hence the name spinning. They could immediately resell or spin out the shares at a profit. As a result, individual shareholders of eBay bring a derivative action. By the way, this whole idea of spinning, this practice is now considered illegal and unethical. So this case is a little bit older, right? It wasn't necessarily considered illegal at the time. It's now generally considered illegal and unethical, in case any of you are wondering about this practice. Okay, so what's the theory of the case, right? What's the theory of the action, and what does this have to do with corporate opportunities? What's the legal claim in the case? The legal claim is that the eBay officers and directors usurped a corporate opportunity that effectively belonged to the company, to eBay, to buy and sell shares of other companies. In other words, the officers and directors took an opportunity of eBay itself, which could have bought and sold the shares of these other companies and made a profit for eBay, right, for the company. So we can analyze spinning under our test for corporate opportunity, right? And we can ask the kinds of questions that we've been asking before. Is the corporation financially able to undertake the transaction? I think the answer is yes. Nobody really disputes that. Is the opportunity in the corporation's line of business? Again, I think the answer there is that eBay is an auction site, right? But the court says yes, they could do this. eBay regularly invested cash in marketable securities, right? And so eBay is therefore in the business of investing, even though its primary business is an auction site. Does the corporation have an interest or expectancy in the opportunity? Again, investing is important to eBay's cash management, right? So I think the short answer there is, well, yeah, there's an interest or expectancy in the opportunity. And finally, does the officer or director, or did the officers or directors here have a conflict of interest? This is a little trickier. It's a little harder to understand why this is the case. The answer here is, I think, yes, right? The eBay directors did have a conflict. And the reason is that they personally benefited, right? They personally benefited, and as a result, they were inclined to hire Goldman Sachs as opposed to some other investment bank down the road, right? And as a result of that, eBay as a company might not necessarily be getting the best deal on something like underwriting fees or even the quality of the underwriter, right? The problem is that the company, as a result of the conflict of interest of the officers and directors, are going to hire Goldman when another investment bank might have given eBay better terms. Now, the defendants argue, well, if the plaintiffs can prevail in this case, then really any private investment opportunity of a director should be given over to the company, right? So if any director or officer just comes across a good investment, then don't they have to give that investment over to the corporation? And the defendants say, that can't be the rule, right? So we should prevail here. That's just going too far. The court rejects that, right? The court rejects that line of thinking. And the reason is that these particular investments that we're talking about in the eBay case were steered to eBay officers to induce them to give eBay's business to Goldman, right? That's different than just having a private investment opportunity, right? That's different than an officer or director of eBay just hearing about a good investment opportunity and taking that opportunity for themselves, right? Normally, a company has no expectation that it will get every private opportunity that comes to its officers. If a company officer learns of a good investment, right, they don't automatically have to give that opportunity over to the company where they work. But here, there was a different set of facts, right? Here, the company is giving something up, namely the choice of which investment bank it's going to use, right, because of this quid pro quo. And there's no corresponding benefit to the company, right? The company eBay is essentially giving something up for nothing, right? They're giving up the choice of which investment bank they're going to hire down the road, but they're not getting anything for themselves. The benefit here really belongs to eBay, but that benefit is being usurped, right, by the directors and officers. So, complicated case, right? Hopefully, if you read the case carefully and then you listen to that discussion, you'll get a little bit more out of it. I'm going to stop the segment here because we're just about at 10 minutes. When we pick up with the last segment, we'll talk about the questions after eBay.